Well, I have to say, it is awesome to be here. And first thing this morning, and I was able to travel with two of the team members, I come in, and it's like this wonderland. All we would have needed was snow, and it would have been perfect. It was like the magical smell of real trees, and it was just great. So thank you very much for such a warm welcome, Brad. And I have to say, to those of you who are visiting us from other places to work, I hope to perhaps entice you that where you're working is fantastic. But your opportunity at Adobe could even be better. So do know there are subliminal messages here. But I want to share with you really two key aspects. One is that for Utah to actually be such a thriving economy, which it already is, but for you to transcend yourself into the next decade and decades ahead, you have to step back and harness the intellectual power that is here in your community, and that intellectual property, that intellectual power is only best served when it's representative of both genders and really inclusive of all people. So I want to share a little bit about how we at Adobe think about diversity and inclusion, and then I want to share a few thoughts in terms of career growth and development, because one thing that we pride ourselves at here at Adobe is that we really give people an opportunity to grow their careers. And, you know, Brad is a fantastic example of that. But personally, I'm a great example of that as well. So if you detect that I speak a little bit different than perhaps your average Californian, that's because I'm not actually from California, and I'm Canadian, and I too joined Adobe via an acquisition. And that was back in 2002, so quite a while ago. And at that point in time, I really looked at Adobe, which at that point was around 3,200 people. We were around 1.2 billion, and we were primarily known as a creative company. We created great tools and software products that allowed people to be creative, and I came from like a small little form workflow company that sold into the enterprise. And the moral of that story is that our company is all about innovation, and it's all about intellectual property. And fortunately, 15 years ago when I joined, I came into the company at one point in time thinking, how might this work out? Might there be growth and opportunity? And there's been ample growth and opportunity in terms of the company and my own personal growth. And that's because as an organization, we view that any technology company, and many of you work for technology companies, your core asset are the people that work for you. And that is the truth. If you're a company that's all about innovation, the only power that you have is ensuring that you have a workforce that actually comes every day, wherever they work, and they contribute their best minds to the problems that you have today and the problems that we'll be facing in the future. And so how we're thinking about that here at Adobe, for one, is we're making sure that we're growing in locations where we know we can attract great people that come to us with a great work ethic, that are super bright, that want to contribute to making a difference. And we're doubling down here in Lehigh. Here at our site, we've announced that this beautiful building will have its twin, and we'll be starting that in the new year ahead. And we're super excited because we're maxed out in capacity, and just like Plural's site, we see that there's an opportunity and an advantage to growing here. But let me be very clear that one of the challenges that we put out when we decided that we'd build this new building is, for us, being a diverse company is paramount, because we truly believe that innovation and impact only comes from having different perspectives, different ideas. And in growing to that next building, it was really important to us that we cultivate an environment that would attract the best individuals, that would keep them in the company and would have them growing. And I'm so proud of the teams here in Lehigh in terms of how they've embraced our three-pronged strategy to diversity. Let me share that with you because I think all of you work at companies that might also want to adopt that approach so that you can continue to grow here in Utah. One is, we all need to be focused on the pipeline for the future, and that's our first part of our strategy. Many of you may or may not, who took actually a technology degree, so who's computer science, etc. So there's not a lot of hands in the air, and what that means is many of you are benefiting from the fact that others took computer science or technology, and I'm one of them. I took political science. That was the only science in my degree. But the reality is we're actually riding on the coattails of individuals that actually took technical degrees. That's super important to us. It's super important to us here at Adobe. I'm sure you'll hear that from Aaron in terms of Pluralsight. In fact, his company helps to actually fuel that pipeline in terms of learning. But for all of us, and for any of you, how many of you have young people at home? We need to encourage the younger generation that technology is vital to our economy. It's vital to our opportunity as an overall country to ensure that we have enough young people actually getting into technology education. And so as a company, we're investing in youth coding initiatives, really making sure that people are exposed to technology early on. They may or may not go down the path to actually taking computer science or engineering, but I think it's incumbent on all of us that if we're really interested in whether it be women in technology or technology here in Utah, technology in our country, that we have to encourage the next generations to really pursue technology degrees and studies. So that's number one. Building a pipeline for the future is super important. And here in Utah, that's super important to your future in terms of incremental growth and investment. So that's first. Second is, at Adobe, our core second priority around diversity and inclusion is really making sure that our candidate pipeline is very broad. One way by which a lot of small companies grow is through employee referral. And I will tell you that the dark side of employee referral is that most of us know people who are exactly the same as us. And that often means that it's very limited in the perspective in terms of where we've lived, perhaps our gender, where we've studied, where we've actually traveled, etc. And so one of the things that we all need to consider is how do we broaden that pipeline? How do we actually look broader in terms of candidates? How do we look at people differently in terms of skills and capabilities? And one of the things that we're trying to do here, and the team has done very successfully, is look at a broader perspective of what experiences could apply to jobs, as well as making sure that we're being proactive in sourcing candidates. And so really think about how you're attracting candidates to your organization, and are you really fulfilling that full opportunity in terms of the potential talent available? So that's the second thing. The third is the most important pillar, and that's what do we do for our active employees? And thank you, Brad, for mentioning our enhanced leave. And I do know we have a little bit of a baby boom underway at Adobe. And for some of us, that train left the station a long time ago. I have a college-age son. But that all being said, it's really important that people know that they can integrate work with life. Most of us work really hard because we're actually going home to something else at night. Hopefully we're not sleeping by our laptop all night. And in order to do that, as companies, we need to invest in benefits that really allow our employees to integrate work and life. We've certainly done that in terms of enhanced leaves. We also have to do that in terms of how people return from loss in their life and how they actually deal with challenges that they have, whether it be sickness or illness, in their overall families. How do we support our employees in terms of learning? How do we make sure that they have ongoing opportunities for growth within the company? Here at Adobe, we look at around 25% plus of our positions being filled first internally before we go external, because the best sign of success are people staying in your own company and growing. And that's something that I really encourage all of you to consider. How do you actually take the path within your own organization to grow? So let me pivot from, our three-pronged approach around pipeline, around candidates and employees, and share a little bit about each of you as individuals. As was shared, I feel really fortunate at Adobe to have had a great opportunity to grow, but for me, what's more rewarding is seeing other people grow their careers, and Brad's an exceptional example of that, along with many other individuals that are joining us here today from Adobe. So, step 1 of 5, these are my 5 thoughts for all of you, because I've spent more than 2 decades plus really focused on the employee experience and hiring a lot of people, and I've met a lot of people along the way. And so there's 5 things that I've noticed can be key to people driving their career. And so these are suggestions for all of you, regardless of gender, and I have to say I'm thrilled to see so many men here, because you're our sponsors and you're the ones that really help to encourage the women that are in the workplace today, the youth that are at home, and frankly your partners that are at home too. So first and foremost, you have to make sure that you actually think about what you're really good at. And I always say number 1 starts with your strengths. We're all going to, of course, do things in our jobs that don't leverage what we're really, really good at. But if you can narrow in and identify early on what you really like to do and what you actually do pretty well without even having to think about it, then that's the start for actually identifying the types of jobs that you could be most successful in. So 1, start with identifying your strengths. Things that you know you do really well, feedback that you've received along the way that reinforces that you're really, really good at it. And take those strengths and maximize them and continue to build on it. So 1, figure out what your strengths are. 2 is definitely make sure that you have a plan. And this is where, the women in the crowd, I will tell you that you do not declare your plans nearly to the same extent as the men in the crowd. And hands down, I can tell you that from real life experience. Women don't tend to declare what it is that they want, and they also don't share what that is with typically their managers. And I think often it's because they fear failure, perhaps maybe to a different degree. So if there's a job posting and there's 10 requirements, women usually will not apply unless they feel like they can check most of the boxes. On the flip side, a lot of men go for the guys, and you should actually follow what they do. If they have 1 or 2, they're more likely to put their hat in the ring, which I think shows a lot of confidence on the part of our male colleagues, but it's something that I would encourage everyone to consider doing. You have to make sure you declare and set your sights on where you want to go, and you have to make sure you share those with others. So determine your strengths, make sure that you share what it is that you want to do. So that's 2. 3 is you have to build your network. So great on all of you that you took time out of your lives to come here today. I think that's really important. I think we're so fortunate, right? Years ago, you used to have to build your network by coming to sessions like this and frankly not necessarily wanting to come. But now you just can go on social and you actually build your network there. So this is not an advertisement for LinkedIn, but it is. You should meet people today, and you should actually build those connections on LinkedIn, and you should make sure that you actually foster those relationships, because those people can actually help you discover your strengths or actually be the network that you need in terms of those next opportunities, or identify those next opportunities for you. So 3rd is definitely make sure that you have your network. 4th is you're not going to end up crossing new territory until you take a risk. And I think most people that you speak to that have actually gotten to a certain point in their career where they're feeling like, wow, I've actually done it, it's usually because they've had to take some risks along the way. There's no way that they will have done and gotten to that level without doing something that was risky, i.e. taking a job that they didn't feel was necessarily something that they were really right to do, and or taking a job that maybe seemed less than what they wanted to do, or making a move, or going on an assignment. So think about, have you taken a risk? A risk sometimes can be that your job is changing and you're actually embracing it. So taking risks, really, really important. And fifth, which is actually probably a perfect tee up to Aaron, not knowing what he's speaking about, but we are living in a world that requires ongoing learning. And if you are going to continue to grow and evolve, there's no way that you stop learning at any point in time in your career. Every day is a new opportunity, and if anything, seek the areas for which you don't know about and seek to learn. Be intellectually curious, and that in of itself will bring you lots of opportunities. So the only last plug I will put is we continue to hire. We're always looking for exceptional people. We are striving to be very diverse here in Lehigh. We're really proud of the moves that were made, but we would embrace all employees actively, and I hope all of you have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you, and all the very best in terms of your growth and development.